The stars of the neutral system shimmered like cold diamonds scattered across a black sea. Silence filled the void, broken only by the faint hum of distant nebulae and the pulse of a dying red giant. For the Krath Dominion, this region of space was little more than a forgotten border zone, far from the central trade routes. Still, the Dominion kept patrol fleets here, just in case smugglers or minor rivals tried to move through unnoticed. On this rotation, it was Commander Valar's fleet that drifted along the edge of the system. His ships were lean, sharp, and perfectly symmetrical, designed with the precision the Krath valued above all. Every vessel was efficient, flawless, and beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. The commander sat in his control chamber staring at the scrolling reports of long-range sensors. The Dominion scouts had cataloged every known empire in this quadrant. Every species, every ship design, every military standard. Nothing ever surprised them anymore. But then one of the screens flickered red. "Unidentified contact detected," reported the sensor officer. His voice carried an unusual tightness, like he did not quite believe the readings. Commander Valar straightened in his seat. Location? Outer rim of the neutral system, moving at sublight. No Dominion identification, no registry marks of the Coalition or the Guild. Unknown drive signature. Unknown. That word alone made the crew exchange glances. Unknowns were rare in this part of the galaxy. Almost everyone had been mapped, classified, or conquered. "Magnify," ordered Valar. The holoscreen shifted, pulling the distant speck into sharper view. A shape appeared against the stars. The ship was enormous. Its hull was jagged, angular, and layered in hard edges rather than smooth curves. Armor plates overlapped like scales, some scarred, some scorched, but all functional. There was no decoration, no elegance. Only purpose. The bridge grew quiet. The ship looked nothing like Dominion craft or the sleek organic ships of their rivals. It looked brutal. "What species builds such an ugly vessel?" whispered one officer. Valar ignored the comment. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Ugly or not, the ship was powerful. Designation?" he asked. The sensors pulsed again, searching. A response ping came back. Across the screen, letters appeared in a tongue not common in this region of space. Translation protocols flickered for a moment, then stabilized. UHS Resolute. The crew exchanged puzzled looks. The acronym meant nothing to them. "Unknown human ship?" one officer suggested, frowning. "Humans?" The word felt strange, almost forgotten. Humans were a minor species on the galactic edge, barely noticed by the great powers. The Dominion had dismissed them long ago. Primitive, scattered, not worth attention. Yet this vessel, drifting silently across the system, bore their mark. Valar tapped his claws against the control panel. "Initiate long-range scan. I want to know what this Resolute is made of." The sensor officer hesitated. "Yes, Commander." The humming of the scanning arrays filled the chamber. Beams of invisible light crossed the void, washing over the alien warship. Data flowed in, lines of numbers scrolling across screens. The first results made the officer pause. "Report," Valar demanded. The officer cleared his throat, uncertain. "Commander, the hull plating is unusually dense. It resists penetration. Even our strongest beams cannot read through all layers. It appears to be reinforced with multiple alloys. Overlapping, redundant, inefficient but extremely durable." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Inefficient yet durable. As if they value survival above elegance." Another officer muttered, "It is a fortress, not a ship." The scans continued. Engine readings came next. Drive systems are fusion-based, but wait, there are multiple backups. Redundant reactors. Signs of experimental drive signatures. It seems designed to keep moving even if half the ship is destroyed. A chill crept into the chamber. Dominion vessels never wasted resources on redundancies. Efficiency was perfection. This design was something else entirely. Then the weapons report came in. The officer reading the data froze mid-sentence. His voice grew quiet. "Commander, they carry rail cannons, dozens of them, missile silos, torpedo bays, and something else. A weapon chamber that appears designed for launching massive solid projectiles at near relativistic speeds. No energy core, no plasma chamber, just kinetic devastation." The bridge erupted in whispers. "Primitive, barbaric. No one uses such weapons anymore." Valar silenced them with a gesture. His gaze was fixed on the data. Primitive or not, a kinetic strike of that magnitude could split a city ship in half. "Who are these humans?" he murmured. The silence stretched long in the control chamber. Outside, the alien warship drifted slowly against the stars, unaware or unconcerned that it was being watched. Finally, the communication officer spoke. "Commander, the vessel has transmitted no hostile signals. Only an automated beacon. Translate it." A moment later, the message came through. "Calm, steady, simple, UHS Resolute. Peaceful exploration mission. Stand clear." The words echoed in the chamber. The Dominion crew shifted uneasily. If this was their peaceful vessel, what did their warships look like? Commander Valar studied the screen. His instincts, sharpened by years of campaigns, whispered a warning. This was no ordinary encounter. This was a threshold. The Dominion had cataloged 1,000 species, crushed dozens of rivals, mapped the galaxy with pride. Yet here, in the quiet of a forgotten system, they had found something that made even their flawless ships feel fragile. Valar's gaze lingered on the name glowing across the stars. Resolute. It was not a boast. It was a promise, and promises he knew could be terrifying. The Krath Dominion fleet floated in silence, their elegant ships watching the massive human warship like hunters afraid of their own prey. The scans had already revealed armor that defied logic, engines built for endless endurance, and weapons that could shatter worlds. But Commander Valar knew the most important secret of any vessel was not its steel or its guns. It was the ones who lived inside it. "Begin biological scans," Valar ordered, his voice low. "Let us see the creatures who built such a ship." The sensor officer hesitated. The last results had unsettled the crew so deeply that no one wanted to look further. Still he obeyed, turning the scanning beams inward. The ship resisted again, its walls bending the probes, but slowly, fragments of life signs emerged. The crew leaned closer. Dozens, hundreds. The readings were not exact, but the picture became clear. The Resolute carried a crew larger than most Dominion vessels. Each life sign pulsed strong, steady, and resilient. The officer frowned at the data. Carbon-based. Oxygen breathers. Humanoid structure. 2 arms, 2 legs, a single head. "Very ordinary," whispers rose. "Ordinary? Could these beings be so unremarkable?" But the officer's expression darkened as he studied further. "Wait, there is more. Their biology. It is strange." Commander Valar's eyes narrowed. "Explain." The officer's voice grew uneasy. "Their tolerances. These creatures can survive extreme radiation levels. They can adapt to oxygen-thin environments. Their gravity range is wider than any species we know. Even their temperatures. They can endure both cold and heat that would cripple us." The chamber grew silent. One officer muttered, "That is impossible. No single species could survive such extremes." The sensor officer shook his head. "It is not impossible. It is their nature. Their bodies do not break easily. They bend, they adapt. Their biology is not elegant, but it is flexible, almost stubborn." The word stubborn echoed across the chamber. Valar studied the readings carefully. These are not fragile beings. They are designed to endure. The scans shifted again, now focusing on the medical sections. The Dominion crew leaned forward as more unsettling details appeared. The human medical bay was not small. It stretched across several decks filled with rows of machines and chambers. "What are those?" an officer asked. The system translated. The words appeared clearly. "Bone regrowth chamber. Limb replacement bay. Genetic therapy unit. Emergency tissue replicators." The crew stared, their eyes wide. One whispered, "Why would they build so many? Why would they need machines to regrow bones, to replace limbs?" The answer came quickly. "Because they do not expect safety," Valar said, his voice calm but heavy. "They expect wounds. They expect loss, and they prepare to keep fighting even after both." The truth sank into the room like a shadow. These humans were not afraid of being broken. They simply built ways to repair themselves, to return stronger. Another officer's voice trembled. "Commander, their designs. It is as if they plan to suffer." Valar did not correct him. The words were true. The scans pushed deeper, showing fragments of human routines. The Dominion saw training chambers where humans ran, lifted, and pushed themselves until their hearts pounded. They saw mess halls where they ate strange food with laughter, even though their supplies looked basic compared to Dominion luxury. They saw sleeping quarters small and cramped, yet filled with personal touches, pictures, books, carved objects. One officer frowned. They decorate, even in war. Why? Because they carry memory, Valar said quietly. They fight not only for themselves, but for what they remember. The more the Krath saw, the more unsettled they became. These were not cold machines or warriors bred only for battle. They were ordinary beings who built extraordinary strength out of hardship. The scans picked up heartbeats steady and strong, some fast, some slow, but all relentless. "Commander," the officer whispered, "their hearts. They do not give up easily. Even under stress, they fight to continue." The crew fell into silence again. For the Dominion, soldiers were tools, replaceable, perfectly trained but easily discarded. For the humans, each soldier seemed to matter, and every design choice spoke of one goal: keep them alive, keep them fighting, keep them standing. Suddenly, the scan locked onto a different signal. A voice, not a transmission but an echo of a conversation inside the human ship. The Dominion translators worked quickly, and then the voices became clear. "Engineering Team 3 report. Reactor 2 is running smooth. Backup systems ready. Medical deck here. All systems functional. Supplies loaded. Captain speaking. Stay sharp. Unknown fleet nearby. Remember, we stand together." The voices were calm, steady, not fearful, not arrogant, simply prepared. The crew of the Dominion ship shivered. "Commander," one officer whispered, "they are not afraid of us." Valar's gaze stayed fixed on the glowing screen. His voice was quiet but certain. "No, they are not." The scans revealed more. Humans did not have enhanced vision like the Krath, nor natural armor like other species. Their bodies scarred easily, their bones could break. By all logic, they should have been fragile. Yet every reading, every chamber, every design screamed the same truth. They had made fragility into strength. They could break, but they would mend. They could fall, but they would rise. And they would rise again and again, until their enemies collapsed first. The Dominion crew began to understand why this ship looked so strange, why its design broke every rule of elegance and efficiency. It was not a ship built for comfort. It was not a ship built to impress allies or frighten rivals with beauty. It was a ship built by a species that expected the worst, and planned to outlast it. "Commander," the officer spoke carefully, "what do you make of them?" Valar's eyes narrowed. He felt the weight of every scar on the human ship, of every heartbeat inside it. He saw not a fragile race, but one that had walked through fire so many times that they now carried fire with them. "They are dangerous," Valar said at last, "not because of their weapons, not because of their engines, but because of their will. Break their bones and they will regrow them. Take their limbs and they will build new ones. Burn their cities and they will raise them again. Every scar makes them harder. Every loss makes them stronger." The chamber fell silent. No one argued. For the first time, the Krath Dominion officers realized something they had never considered before. They were not staring at another rival species, one they could simply classify, study, and dominate. They were staring at survivors. Survivors who had turned survival into an art, into a weapon sharper than any blade. The human ship remained still, its beacon pulsing across the void, resolute. It was not just a name. It was a declaration. The Krath fleet drifted uneasily, their scans still active but their courage fading. Commander Valar leaned back in his chair, his voice soft but heavy with meaning. "If this is their ordinary crew, then the galaxy has underestimated them." And deep within him, a quiet thought grew, one he did not dare share aloud. Perhaps the galaxy will not be ready when humanity truly rises. The alien warship hung silent in the void, a dark figure against the stars. To the Krath Dominion fleet, it looked less like a vessel and more like a shadow of steel, a fortress that refused to bow to the emptiness of space. The Krath ships circled at a safe distance, their sleek hulls gleaming like polished blades, but none of them moved closer. Commander Valar stood in his command chamber, his eyes fixed on the giant screen. The human ship, this resolute, waited, motionless, as if daring them to look deeper. "Continue the scans," Valar ordered, his voice steady. The sensor officer's hands worked quickly across glowing controls. Lines of data began to flow again, each string of numbers pulling back a layer of the unknown. The alien crew leaned forward, tense. At first, The scan returned only static. The Resolute's hull was not just dense, it resisted. Every beam the Dominion fired at it returned scrambled results, bouncing back as if the ship itself was fighting the intrusion. The officer frowned. Strange. Our scans are being disrupted. Not blocked, but twisted. Twisted? Valar's brow ridges lowered. Yes, Commander. The hull's plating is layered with strange alloys. Some are reflective, others absorb our signals. It is not a single shield. It is a patchwork of barriers. Another officer shook his head. That is wasteful. To use so many materials without elegance. It is crude. Valar silenced him with a glare. Crude does not mean weak. The scans pushed harder. Slowly, layer by layer, the ship revealed itself. The first details came from its outer structure. The hull was scarred and patched, as if it had faced battle and survived. The scars were not polished away, not hidden under cosmetic plating. They remained, marks of endurance, not shame. The Dominion officers whispered uneasily. Their own ships were works of art, flawless and smooth, every surface designed for symmetry. To see a vessel that carried its wounds openly was unsettling. Report, Valar commanded. The officer spoke carefully. The armor plating is redundant. It repeats itself in layers. Even if the outer layer is destroyed, the next will hold. It is like building walls within walls. The commander's claws tapped against the arm of his chair. Redundancy was considered wasteful in the Dominion. But here, redundancy meant survival. The scans moved inward. Engines. The Dominion expected to see something primitive, an overpowered fusion core perhaps, or a crude chemical reactor. Instead, they found complexity. There are 3 main reactors, the officer reported, his voice low. 1 primary, 2 backups, all connected but each able to function alone. The design ensures the ship continues moving even if damaged beyond repair. And, wait. He paused, recalibrating the scan. There are traces of experimental drives. I cannot confirm, but it looks like a hybrid between standard fusion and something else. Perhaps an attempt to mimic slipstream travel. The chamber grew still. Dominion ships never carried more than 1 drive system. 1 was enough. To carry several was unnecessary, even foolish. And yet the human ship had done it. Why? Whispered one officer. Why would they carry so much? Why would they build like this? The sensor officer answered without lifting his gaze. Because they expect to fail yet refuse to stop. The words hung in the air like a weight. The scans shifted again. This time, they revealed weapons. Lines of numbers filled the display, and then the system translated them into clear images. Silos, cannons, launchers. The Dominion crew stared. Rail cannons, the officer whispered. So many rail cannons, dozens, mounted along the hull, each one capable of firing solid slugs at incredible speeds. Valar's eyes narrowed. Primitive technology, yet effective. Not just cannons, the officer continued. His voice trembled slightly now. Missile silos, torpedoes, plasma charges, and something else. The chamber leaned forward. There is a chamber along the lower decks. It is reinforced like nothing I have seen. It appears to be designed for kinetic strikes, large projectiles, no plasma, no energy core, just metal rods launched at near relativistic speeds. The bridge went silent. No one in the modern galaxy used such weapons anymore. They were crude, resource-heavy, and destructive beyond reason. Plasma beams were cleaner, faster, more efficient. But a kinetic strike? That was pure devastation. A single rod, hurled at such speeds, could shatter a fortress or crack the crust of a planet. One officer muttered nervously, "Who builds such things? Who wastes so much power on blunt destruction?" Another whispered, "Not warriors. Savages." Valar rose from his chair, his eyes locked on the display. His voice cut through the whispers like a blade. "No, not savages. Survivors. They do not waste. They prepare. If their elegant weapons fail, their crude ones will still kill. If their refined reactors fall, their backups will carry them. Everything about this ship speaks one truth. They refuse to die. The words chilled the chamber. For the first time in years, the officers of the Dominion felt something they had nearly forgotten. Fear. The scans continued slower now, as if the officers themselves hesitated to learn more. The medical bay was next. To the Krath, this was a simple matter. Beds, healers, machines to keep their soldiers alive. But the human ship showed something different. There are regeneration chambers, the officer said slowly. Machines that repair bone. Devices that regrow limbs. Genetic treatments to rebuild damaged tissue. Their medical systems are not designed to heal the comfortable. They are designed to drag the dying back into battle. The crew stared. Dominion ships cared for efficiency, not recovery. If a soldier fell, another took their place. But humans? They built machines to keep every soldier fighting, the officer whispered almost to himself. They plan for pain. They expect loss. Yet they prepare to stand again. Valar's chest grew heavy. Each detail pulled the image together. A ship built not for elegance or beauty, but for endurance. A vessel designed not to shine, but to survive. He finally spoke. What else can we see? The scans pushed deeper into the data cores. Encrypted walls blocked much of the Dominion's probes, but fragments leaked through. Fragments of history, records of battles. Images flashed across the Dominion screens. Soldiers in crude armor, marching through ruined landscapes. Cities rebuilt from rubble. Fleets rising again after annihilation. The humans had not fought one war. They had fought thousands. Against themselves, against others, against the void itself. The Dominion crew sat in silence. For every scar they saw on the Resolute's hull, they now saw a mirror in the human's history. Finally, the officer looked up. His face was pale. Commander, this ship, it is not a warrior's craft. It is the craft of a people who have learned to suffer and yet continue. It is a weapon made of patience and pain and endurance. No one spoke after that. The chamber was quiet, filled only with the low hum of the scanning systems. Valar stared at the name on the screen. Resolute. He understood now. It was more than a name. It was their nature. And for the first time, Commander Valar wondered if the galaxy had made a mistake ignoring humanity. Part 4. The Doctrine of Humanity. The Krath Dominion fleet hung tense in the void, their elegant ships circling the UHS Resolute with caution. Each passing moment of observation brought unease. The human vessel had already defied every expectation. Armor stronger than any Dominion alloy. Engines that could endure almost any damage. Weapons that could tear through even the largest warships. Yet the greatest shock was still to come. Commander Valar watched the screen, studying the ship's internal systems with a mixture of fascination and dread. Begin data extraction, he ordered. We need to understand their doctrine, their strategy, their history, everything. The sensor officer hesitated. Commander, some of the information is encrypted, highly secured. It may take time. Time is a luxury we do not have, Valar said. Do it anyway. The Dominion technicians worked feverishly, forcing their analysis tools to penetrate the human ship's databases. At first, only fragments appeared, tiny files, incomplete logs, but even these fragments told a story far different from what they expected. The first records were battle reports. Human engagements not with the Krath but with other human factions, planetary wars, skirmishes on barren moons, naval fights across asteroid belts. The Dominion officers expected primitive tactics, inefficient strategies, reckless bravery. What they saw instead was methodical, disciplined, and relentless. These humans fight carefully, whispered one officer, but relentlessly. Yes, Valar said, leaning closer to the screen. They do not fight to destroy only. They fight to endure. Every maneuver, every strike, every fallback is designed to keep them alive until they achieve victory. The sensors moved deeper into the human ship's databanks. Logs of past campaigns unfolded on the holoscreen. Planets that had been bombarded to ruin and rebuilt. Fleets shattered in space and reassembled stronger. Colonies that had survived famine, disease, and invasion. One officer leaned forward, disbelief written across his face. "Commander, they rebuild even after total destruction. They recover. Always?" Vaylor nodded slowly. "That is their doctrine. Humanity does not rely on invincibility. They rely on endurance. They accept loss and use it to grow stronger. Their history is a lesson in resilience." The Dominion officers watched, captivated. Even their own commanders had rarely seen such determination across species. The humans did not have natural weapons, sharp claws, or thick armor like some species. Their biology was vulnerable in many ways, and yet they had survived and thrived through sheer will, ingenuity, and adaptation. The next set of data revealed more unsettling details. Humans had stored not only strategies but lessons learned from every disaster. They did not repeat mistakes. They improved constantly, making new weapons, building new ships, training new crews, and refining every tactic. Every generation became stronger, smarter, more efficient. The officer whispered in awe. They weaponized survival itself. Every mistake, every wound, every loss, it makes them more dangerous. Vaylor's claws tapped the arm of his chair as he absorbed the reports. He had known humans were resilient. He had expected stubbornness, clever improvisation, even reckless bravery. But this was beyond expectation. Humans did not fight for pride or honor alone. They fought because they had learned to endure until all others failed. The scans continued, showing human training programs and simulations. Young humans learned not only combat skills but endurance, problem-solving, leadership, and teamwork. Even when simulations failed, the humans analyzed the outcome, corrected errors, and tried again. Failure was not shameful, it was preparation. "Commander," one officer said softly, "they are not just warriors. They are survivors trained as weapons, and the weapon itself is their will." Vaylor did not respond immediately. He studied the image of the UHS Resolute, massive and scarred, floating calmly as though aware it was being examined. The ship itself seemed to embody humanity's doctrine: endure, adapt, rebuild, and fight again. The data banks revealed more. Detailed maps of star systems, hidden colonies, secret fleets. Humans had prepared for every conceivable threat: natural disasters, hostile species, internal conflict. They did not wait for danger. They anticipated it and built solutions in advance. Another officer muttered, "They plan for the impossible and still survive it. They have no fear of loss, only of failure." "Yes," Vaylor said, his voice calm but heavy. "To them, death is not the end. It is a test. Every wound, every scar, every fallen comrade, it shapes them into something stronger. Their doctrine is simple yet terrifying. Survive at all costs, endure beyond all odds, and adapt until victory is certain." The Dominion crew fell silent. Words failed them. They had studied empires that crushed thousands of worlds, species that destroyed fleets with ease, generals who ruled with iron precision, and yet none of those threats had endured as humans did. None had weaponized survival itself. Vaylor's mind turned to strategy. If a fleet like this were ever unleashed in war, if humans ever turned their endurance outward rather than inward, the galaxy would be unprepared. The next fragment of data was even more alarming. Human communications and orders to their own fleet emphasized cooperation over individual glory. Every officer, every soldier, every crew member was trained to support the mission, to cover each other, to absorb loss without breaking. One human officer's log read simply, "We may fall, but we will rise together. No one is left behind. Every life matters. Every effort counts. This is how we survive." The Dominion officers stared, unease growing. Their own fleets valued perfection and efficiency over compassion or unity. One mistake or loss was a setback, sometimes fatal. Humans had built a doctrine where loss was expected and used as fuel for improvement. Vaylor finally spoke, his voice low and serious. "They are dangerous not because of their weapons, not because of their numbers, not because of their speed. They are dangerous because they never surrender. They never give up. They learn, they endure, they adapt, and they will survive when all others fail." One officer, usually composed and analytical, whispered in disbelief, "Commander, do they know the galaxy fears them? Or do they simply continue?" Vaylor's gaze did not leave the holoscreen. "They do not need fear. Fear slows. Humans rely on preparation, resilience, and action. The galaxy may fear them soon enough, but by then it may already be too late. The Dominion's sensors detected another signal, a faint, routine transmission from the UHS Resolute's bridge. Calm, steady, and deliberate. Humans did not need to threaten. Their presence alone conveyed warning. Unknown fleet detected. Maintain position. We seek peace, but we are prepared for conflict if required. Humanity endures. The words echoed through the Dominion command chamber. The calmness of the message was almost frightening. No anger, no prideful boast. Only certainty and preparedness. Vaylor leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He had seen great fleets, powerful empires, and feared species. Yet humanity, in its quiet endurance, had surpassed all. Their doctrine was clear. Fight not just to win, but to survive, to learn, and to rise stronger with every trial. The crew of the Dominion looked at one another in disbelief. They had come expecting to find a fragile, primitive species, a curiosity at best. Instead, they had discovered a civilization that had taken survival to a level they had never imagined. Vaylor's eyes narrowed. If this is their doctrine, then any fleet that faces them must prepare for a war that never ends. Every battle will teach them, every loss will strengthen them, and every challenge will forge them into something unstoppable. The silence in the chamber was heavy. The officers understood the meaning. Humans were not just resilient, they were relentless. Not just clever, they were adaptive beyond expectation. Not just brave, they were disciplined in endurance. The UHS Resolute remained still in the distance, its hull scarred, its engines humming quietly. It was a single ship, yes, but it represented an entire species forged by survival, endurance, and unyielding will. Commander Vaylor knew something fundamental had changed. The Krath Dominion had always prided itself on knowledge, strategy, and power. But here, in the void of the neutral system, they had glimpsed a truth that could not be ignored. The humans' doctrine was not a plan for war alone. It was a plan for life itself. And in that plan, they had become something the Dominion had never expected. Unstoppable. Vaylor leaned forward, his claws resting on the edge of his console. Prepare to observe further. The next step is to see who commands this ship. If we understand their leadership, perhaps we can understand the full scope of this doctrine. And as the Krath Dominion fleet watched silently, the UHS Resolute continued its slow drift through the stars. A quiet promise hung in the void. Humanity endured, and nothing, not fear, not war, not the galaxy itself, would make them yield. The Krath Dominion fleet hovered tens of thousands of kilometers from the human warship, uneasy and tense. For hours they had observed, scanned, and analyzed the UHS Resolute. Every detail, every fragment of data had been unsettling. Armor that resisted penetration, weapons capable of devastation, engines designed to survive any damage, and a crew whose endurance surpassed imagination. Commander Vaylor paced his bridge, his claws clicking softly against the polished metal floor. The human doctrine, the philosophy of survival they had revealed, weighed heavily on him. He had studied countless species, mapped thousands of worlds, and faced threats that could destroy entire fleets, yet nothing had prepared him for this. They are different, Vaylor murmured almost to himself. Not just strong, not just clever. They endure, one officer hesitated. Commander, they have scanned us already. Surely they know our positions, our capabilities. Vaylor's eyes narrowed. They do. And they are calm. That is what terrifies me. The human warship remained still, its massive silhouette cutting a shadow across the void. Despite the constant observation, it showed no aggressive maneuvers. No sudden acceleration. No weapons deployment. Only the quiet pulse of its beacon, steady and confident. The Dominion fleet's sensors picked up a subtle shift. The UHS Resolute had activated its communication array. A transmission was incoming, encrypted at first, then automatically translated by the Dominion systems. The bridge fell silent. Unknown fleet detected. Your presence is noted. We seek peace. Stand clear. Humanity is prepared for conflict if necessary. The message was calm, steady, clear, no threats, no arrogance. Only certainty, one officer whispered. Commander, they do not fear us, Vaylor nodded slowly. No, they do not. And that is why they terrify me. The Dominion officers had expected a species to either submit to their observation or to flee. They had expected arrogance, panic, or at least caution. But this was different. Humanity's confidence was not arrogance. It was experience. It was preparation forged in fire. It was endurance. Baylor motioned to the sensor officer. Scan their movement vectors. The results came in quickly. The UHS Resolute had begun a slow course change. Not away, not toward the Dominion fleet, but a trajectory that seemed almost casual, almost indifferent. The ship was positioning itself in the center of the neutral system, aligning with stars and planetary orbits as if calculating unseen mathematics. They are not attacking, the officer said, yet they are not retreating either. Correct, Valar said. They do not need to attack. Their presence alone is a warning, and in their doctrine warnings are enough. The Dominion fleet shivered in silence. They had been trained to face enemies who relied on brute force, cunning, or overwhelming technology. But humans relied on survival, and survival, they had learned, was their greatest weapon. Another officer spoke, voice trembling. Commander, their ships, their crews, everything about them is designed to endure. Even if we destroy half their fleet, they will recover. Even if we destroy their ship, they will rebuild. Every defeat strengthens them. Every battle teaches them. This is endless. Valar leaned forward, his claws resting on the console. Yes, that is why they terrify. They are not defeated by destruction. They are not slowed by loss. They turn suffering into strength, and we are the unknowns in their path. A third officer spoke, voice almost a whisper. Commander, if this is one ship, one crew, what must their entire species be like? Valar did not answer immediately. He studied the human warship drifting calmly through the stars, its scarred hull a testament to battles survived and endured. Slowly, he spoke, voice low and steady. They are unstoppable, not because of weapons, not because of numbers, not because of speed. They are unstoppable because they endure. Every wound heals, every failure teaches, every loss strengthens. They turn pain into power and survival into a weapon. The crew of the Dominion stared in disbelief. It was one thing to face a fleet of humans, it was another to face the principle behind them. Endurance. Relentless, unyielding endurance. Valar's mind raced. He had led fleets against cunning species that used stealth, ambush, and overwhelming firepower. Yet none had weaponized survival as humans had. None had made the act of enduring itself the ultimate strategy. The UHS Resolute shifted course slightly, aligning its sensors toward the Dominion fleet. No weapons were deployed, no hostile signal transmitted, only observation. A sudden thought struck one officer, and he whispered it aloud. Commander, what if this is a test? What if their calm is a challenge? Valar's eyes narrowed. If it is a test, then they are already winning. Because we are afraid, not of what they do, but of who they are. The Dominion fleet's scanners detected another subtle anomaly. The humans' internal systems were preparing, not for battle, but for endurance. Emergency medical systems were online, redundant reactors spinning quietly in the background, tactical simulations running across the ship's network. It was as if the UHS Resolute anticipated every possible scenario and had prepared solutions for each. They planned for every possibility, muttered another officer. Every failure has a response. Every threat has a counter. And yet, Valar said, his voice barely audible, they remain calm. They do not panic. They do not hesitate. This is what terrifies us. They do not need to strike. They only need to endure, and the galaxy will fall into their rhythm. Another officer spoke up, voice trembling. Commander, we have faced enemies with stronger weapons, faster ships, and larger fleets, but none have endured like this. None have turned survival into a weapon. What do we do? Valar did not answer immediately. He stared at the screen, the glowing outline of the UHS Resolute drifting silently across the void. Slowly he spoke, voice heavy with realization. We observe. We analyze. We flee if we must. But make no mistake, if humanity decides to act, even one ship, one crew, can teach the galaxy a lesson it will not forget. And if they bring their doctrine to full war, then nothing can stop them. Nothing. The Dominion officers sat in silence. The weight of that truth pressed down on them like gravity. For all their experience, all their pride, all their knowledge of the stars, they had encountered something they could not measure, could not calculate, could not predict. The UHS Resolute drifted closer, slowly, purposefully, yet still without aggression. Its hull gleamed faintly under the starlight, scarred but resilient. Its engines hummed with a steady, unwavering rhythm. Finally, the human ship's transmission came again, calm and deliberate. Unknown fleet detected. Be advised, humanity seeks peace, but we are prepared for war. The words echoed in the Dominion command chamber. They did not shout. They did not threaten. They simply stated a fact. Humanity endured. Humanity was ready. Humanity was resolute. Valar leaned back, his claws resting heavily on the arm of his chair. His voice was quiet, almost to himself, but every officer heard it. If this is how they prepare for peace, what will they unleash in war? The Dominion ships shivered. They had come to study a strange vessel, a minor curiosity at the edge of a neutral system. Instead, they had witnessed the strength of an entire species distilled into one ship. One crew and one doctrine, survival above all, endurance as a weapon, and an unyielding will that could not be broken. And in the darkness of space, as the stars shimmered coldly around them, the Krath Dominion understood the truth. Humanity was not just another species. They were something greater, something relentless, something that would leave even the most powerful empires wary and terrified. The UHS Resolute continued to drift quietly, carrying its crew, its doctrine, and the promise of humanity's endurance across the void. And the Krath Dominion, for the first time in its long history, felt the weight of true fear, not of what humans had done, but of what they were capable of. Because survival, when turned into a weapon, was unstoppable.